focus. Ideate, innovate, enable. Forbes India presents the Data Circle, India's Changemakers, in association with Snowflake.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Forbes India presents the Data Circle, India's Changemakers in association with Snowflake. I'm Mugdha Kalra. In an era and economy dominated by digital transformation and interconnected systems, the need for India's data security prowess is paramount. As business, government organizations, and individuals increasingly rely on digital platforms, safeguarding sensitive information becomes important to prevent cyber threats, ensure privacy, and maintain the trust of stakeholders. And to talk more about the same, joining me is my panel of experts. Avinash Naik, CIO, Bajaj, Allianz, General Insurance. Arunkumar, Iyer, Business Head and Senior Director, Risk Solutions and Data and Analytics, Market Intelligence and Analytics, CRISIL. And Vijayant Rai, Managing Director, Snowflake India. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Avinash, let me start with you. Insurance as a sector has been very fascinated, I would say, by data-driven strategies and have been one of the first ones to also include that in their bouquet of services and also changes within the organization. But when we talk about risk, and when we talk about consumer behavior, how do you see AI and predictive data analysis sort of helping, and what challenging prospects do you also see when it comes as a company that is embracing data-driven services?
Sure, thanks, Mugdha. So insurance as a domain has always been at the forefront of using data. So at the heart of insurance lies the actuarial science, and actuaries cannot live without data. They make decisions based on data. So since inception, since the time insurance has been out there, data has been, the heart of insurance. But what has happened is, let's say in the case of a company like Bajaj Allianz, over the course of our existence over the last 22 plus years, we have acquired over 14 crore customers. And now to be able to, identify risks, underwrite customers, basis such a huge amount of data is physically getting impossible, and not at the pace at which we would want.
True.
So that is where, the newer technologies like, let's say, AI or analytics comes into picture. So typically things that would have been done in Excel sheets, which is where data was used primarily in the past, that is now moving into more like, using data lake to be able to process all this information in a much more near real-time fashion, if not real-time, to be able to drive insights and be able to, identify the right customers, weed out, fraudulent customers, which is probably more important, if not equal important. I think that is where the biggest strength of AI lies, in a nutshell.
Taking the same thought to CRISIL, which was always a legacy enterprise and not a digital native, give us some examples of how data-powered transformation happened within the organization first, and what was that experience like, and also share with us some stories about the people you work with and how have they benefited from this entire change.
So CRISIL has always been very agile in adapting to the changes that have happened in terms of digital transformation journeys. In fact, you'd be surprised to know we look at both efficiencies as well as customer centricity is the core for us. How do these efficiencies drive the customer centricity? And that's the theme that we run with every time we look at it. It's just not about efficiency in operations. We have built a tool which is called SMART, which actually automates the entire manual labor intensive process of financial analysis. So what it does is it takes the documents, it looks at the financial ratios, gives an output to the analyst so that he can start working without going through or manually doing all those computations. Second, from a data journey, we have built a platform which is called Phoenix, which actually streamlines the entire data operations. When I say it streamlines the entire data operations, right from the data sourcing, using ML to convert the data, extract the data from those documents, do a quality check, and pushing it back to the analyst for further information. So what it does is the entire journey of the data cleansing, looking at the data, reading the data, the amount of time you're going to spend comes down drastically. And the impact for the customer is very high because the time to the market is also very less. These are two large initiatives that we have driven over the last few years. The third one, obviously, many would be aware in the market, we have a product called Context, which is a data platform, where it houses about 65,000 plus information, company information about ratings and financial information as well. So these are the large three ones. And if you look at the impact on the market from what we have done, we have got about solutions that we have implemented in clients' places in financial services, something like, say, a product called an Icon, which automates the entire journey of a credit rating right from the start till the end. If you look at an early warning from a credit monitoring perspective, it consumes the data, gives you the triggers, and then gives you an output in terms of what it has to be done. So early warning is the second one that we have done. So similarly, we have a lot of those success stories that we have built around. So data and analytics has been a key or a core for us from an overall perspective.
I think the challenge always is there is so much of data mining that is happening, but most companies struggle with what data is relevant to them. And I think that has been one of the challenges with every company, that, all right, we have found now this data, but how to not waste time on the wrong data. So I guess that is so Smart Phoenix and the third platform. Context. All right. Okay. Vijayant, let me get you in. Snowflake has played a significant role in enabling organizations to embrace cloud data platforms. And you've been doing it for a while. We have been seeing stories around that as well. How do you see the evolution of data warehousing and analytics in the cloud shaping up? And what are the challenges really now that you've been there and have seen how it is growing? What are the challenges it is throwing?
Sure. Thanks, Mukta. Great question, by the way. I mean, data, if you look at it, the big challenges any enterprise has, even public sector, government, everybody, is dealing with data in silos. So I think the number one challenge is to how do you actually break those silos? How do you bring the data together? Because only then can you actually start getting some control over what you want in terms of outcomes, analytics, and everything else. So the number one challenge is breaking the silos, bringing data into one place. The second biggest challenge today, what we believe, is around creating a data-driven culture in organizations. And that's basically two parts. One is the people side of things, and second is processes as to how do you deal with data, what governance practices do you have in place, and all of that. Because without all of that, it all breaks. And then the third piece, and this is where I think Snowflake really stands out, is how do we help you then monetize your data? And then make the maximum use of data in different networks. Today, I mean, we're just talking about organizations and getting a grip of their own data. But in the future, how do you interact with data ecosystems to be able to monetize your data, to be able to make more use of data, get more insights and analytics out of it? So these are the three key areas we believe and challenges which need to be sort of looked at. The first is around the silos piece of it. The second is governance, people, process, and third is how do you actually start thinking about monetizing your data? I mean, today Indian enterprises are sitting over mountains of data of all kinds. True. And then you have all the unstructured data out there in the internet and everything else. How do you all bring it together so that you can actually get actual gains out of it? Otherwise, it becomes a burden, right, to manage. And like you said, the whole aspects of security, governance, and other aspects to look at there. So we believe that's the challenge out there. The opportunity is amazing, right? I mean, if you look at India itself, we are turning towards becoming a very large data-driven economy, right? Macroeconomic conditions are amazing at this point of time. Probably the most dynamic growing economy in the world. So data is at the center of what we're seeing all around us. May it be citizen services, DPG, all of that. And we believe that's the opportunity in front of the enterprises as well, as to get control of that data and then get those insights to be able to monetize and make most out of it.
You spoke about data privacy as well, data protection, and I think that is a great segue to my next question, and I'll take it with Avinash and then come to both of you, Arun and Vijayant. Specifically, when we talk about insurance as an industry, insurance companies heavily rely on data and leverage personalized data, of course, for services, etc. How then the narrative of security, privacy, and ethical practices that come in, how is that balance struck? And what are some of those practices that are being put in place to strike that balance?
So that's a very good question, Mugdha. So I'll answer the question in two parts. I'll address the security part later,
Yeah.
but the first one is about we are an insurance company. I think trust is fundamental, right? So I think the first part in evoking or maintaining the trust is transparency. So you need to be very transparent in terms of what is the data that you are gathering from the customers. The customers need to know what is it that you're capturing from the customer's perspective. That is number one. Number two is consent. We do not take any data without the consent of the customer. So consented data is something that we work on. If you were to talk about, let's say, personalization at a customer level, that is the ideal situation where we would want to use the data at a customer level. But if the customer is uncomfortable, we usually work with anonymized data or data at an aggregate level, which will still, to a great degree of accuracy, will give us the insights that we would need. So that is the first part of the story. The second is when you are capturing and retaining customer data, you have to have strong data security practices in place. I think there is no doubt about it. A lot of the IT budget today goes into investing into security. Both in terms of, let's say, encryption, in terms of putting all the rails in place to be able to ensure that the data is secure. And it is an evolving process, right? I mean, you can never say that you are out there, but you constantly need to look at the landscape and keep improving your data posture day in, day out basis.
Very interesting is the customer behavior as well. In India, a lot of people put convenience over their privacy and security. And at the moment, we are seeing the previous generations being all right about their data being circulated like that. But, as the data protection laws coming and regulations are coming, we are also seeing a change in people's behavior, customer behavior. Do they ask a lot of questions? Have you also come around customers or people practices where those questions are coming up? That
There are questions coming up in pockets. I wouldn't say, the awareness is growing.
Yeah.
We are now seeing that customers, be it at the call center or be it, over emails, customers ask, what are you going to do with the data? That is the number one question that comes up.
Right.
Second question that comes up is, how long are you going to retain this data? So these are the two commonly asked questions that I've come across, which means that the awareness is increasing.
Yeah. What has your experience been with the data privacy regulation and how people are perceiving and what the companies ask and what is given to them at a organizational level? How do you decide on the ethical part of it? And there are concerns around data protection while also maintaining accurate credit risk evaluation. So how does that all pan out?
Okay, CRISIL has two aspects to it. One is the ratings, the CRISIL ratings.
True.
The second is a non-ratings business. So if you look from the CRISIL ratings lens, SEBI has defined very comprehensive guidelines, and there is a regular compliance and audit that keeps happening there. So that ensures that the right amount of balance and checks are there in terms of data privacy, because a lot of these are enterprise-related data, sensitive data, unpublished data that comes into play. So a lot of effort goes around that in terms of maintaining it from the governing perspective as well. If you look from a tech standpoint, while we know CRISIL is known for its trust and unbiased view, and so the onus is all the more for us to ensure that we have set up high standards when people look at us from an industry perspective. So our data governance policies are a bit notch higher than what the industry would want to look at. So we always keep, and I use the word notch not from a ratings perspective, but yeah, we kind of get familiar with that terminology. So we always whatever has been defined as an industry standard, we try to keep it a bit more conservative and stricter than what it is from an overall perspective. And as Avinash mentioned, I think needless to say, the data encryption, the leakage policies, or the access controls, or the data security, those have paramount importance to us as well. Having said that, we deal a lot more with enterprise data and very little with individual data. So while we still ensure that we maintain all of those in the way that the standards have to be maintained, if in case of where we need to disseminate the data, or we need to store the data or retain the data, we ensure that it is non-personal identifiable and only shared on a need-to-be basis with a right amount of controls and access that we do about. That's broadly how we go about doing it in terms of what CRISIL does as an organization there.
All right. Well, as organizations are increasingly prioritizing data driven decision making, their demands are also higher when it comes to real time analytics, especially when we talk about e commerce or e finance. How does that influence the workings at your end? And does that put a lot of pressure? Are you putting up a lot of other infrastructure to handle that kind of demand from your customers?
Again, great question, Mugdha. I mean, if you look at it, the mountains of data which customers will have to deal with will only go up.
Right.
And all industries, especially those like you mentioned, which require real-time insights and decisioning, will be dealing with more and more data at any point of time. And I think that's where, when you look at these large-scale data platforms like Snowflake, which are available at their disposal, because these are elastic and they scale across the globe. And with an infrastructure which an enterprise can't have on its own.
Right.
Maintaining and building something like that takes a very different level and scale of involvement. So that's something which platforms like this can actually help with. They can help you look at your data. They can, of course, I mean, when you're looking at insights and decisioning on top of that, we get into the realm of AI, and we get into the realm of now generative AI as well, right? So what essentially platforms like this could do is help organizations bring in all that data, can also help action AI on top of it, bring in AI models into platforms like this, and help get insights, outcomes, everything out of that. So a lot of this is now being managed at an industrial scale by platforms like Snowflake, which will allow customers to bring in all their data there, and also at the same time ensure that everything you're doing is secure and governed. We talked about the fact of the data protection bill. We talked about privacy and those sort of things. You can imagine that these platforms are also learning from whatever's happening globally, right? May it be GDPR in Europe or other rules in US, etc. And those things are already built into the platform. So what that does for customers is a lot of stuff which they would have to otherwise do themselves is done by the platform. So masking of an X nature of data can be done en masse, and takes away from the burden from the customer. So that's how platforms can actually help scale and keep up with that load of data and give insights that customers need.
And actually, it also helps when you are using platforms versus developing your own platform, because um, you may think you have the expertise, but you may not have the scale. And when you want to scale, then you find yourself. Do you also encounter people who have had issues with data and have then come with you with a problem to manage
Yeah,
that
all the
data?
time, all the time. And again, it's like leaving the job to the experts.
Correct.
I mean, our job is data, our job is AI. We have the scale and the wherewithal, we have the technical prowess here, we have R&D, which is working on this constantly. So essentially, an e-commerce company should just focus on what they're supposed to do,
Correct.
leave the remaining to us, and we just keep helping them stay ahead in terms of the tech side of things and managing data in a manner which keeps the customer ahead any point of time. So happens all the time.
Yeah.
But then it's a learning process for everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Crystal gazing a bit, going forward, Avinash, where do you see the industry now pivoting towards when it comes to AI and machine learning? And how is it likely to transform your industry and your organization as well? What are you looking forward to in the upcoming months? Because it's so difficult to keep up with this technology. Every time you think this is what we are going to use, this is what we are going to work with, you find temptation in something else that has come, and then learning and skill development and adapting to it also becomes a challenge. So what are some of the things that you are seeing, some of the emerging trends perhaps in the times to come?
So I'll just ride on to what Vijayant said. So we have been talking about AI until last year, and suddenly now we are talking about Gen AI. And so I believe we have not even scratched the surface as far as Gen AI is concerned. And I believe with the advent of Gen AI and over a period of time, let's say in the next couple of years, the economics will also work out in the Indian context. And I believe with that happening, the investments that we have made in terms of, let's say our customer facing chatbot, those investments are going to become much more intelligent. Uh, that is number one. So the existing assets are going to become much more intelligent. Secondly, the pace at which innovations can happen, I think that is going to get fast tracked.
Right.
So you do not have to spend, months and years training, your systems. With the advent of Gen AI, you have pre-trained models. So the overall time to train, the time to market actually is going to get cut down, rapidly. So the way I look at it, since you asked about crystal gazing, so I see that something like claim settlement in an insurance company. I think that is going to from.
Right.
So we are already talking about settling claims in half an hour's time for a certain size of claims. So that number is going to come down to, let's say, 5 minutes or near real time.
Oh, wow.
So that is the kind of change that we are looking at. Similarly, on the underwriting side, a whole lot of human intervention is going to, get cut down. Plus, on the experience side, on the customer experience side, we are already seeing that a lot of people are shifting from, let's say, call centers to humanless bots. So I think that journey is only going to get fast tracked over the next couple of years.
Interesting. If we were to look at CRISIL and financial markets, how do you think the data analytics will perhaps help in investment decisions and market predictions? Do you think there will be a time when we are able to do that more credibly and in a more advanced sort of fashion?
See, the answer, short and sweet, is yes.
Ah.
And I would certainly believe so. But if you look at, as you rightly called out, there is a huge democratization of the data that has happened over the last few years. Thanks to the pandemic as well. Some of these have become accelerators today.
Yeah, what we would have thought would come in 7-8 years
would
sort of
kind of
came in
come
early.
in much earlier as well. So there are zillions of data that is available today. And as you rightly said, what is the data that is going to be relevant from an analysis perspective? And how can we use it? In fact, from a credit decisioning perspective, there has been a lot that is already done in the market. You have rating workflows, you have decision making, you have AI models that are kind of throwing out those numbers. So that's already there. Coming to investments and markets, and two aspects, if I have to look at it, one is the data itself. And as the data increases, a lot more focus on data management, the data visualization tools, how do you manage them, how do you store them? And most importantly, the question that you asked him, how do you retrieve the data real time? Because I want to see it on my screen, the dashboard, very quickly. And I don't want to wait for, I'll just switch on the machine, I'll come up tomorrow morning, I'll see what's happening on the dashboard. That's not what it is. People want it real time. So challenge is going to be there. From a use case perspective, there are a lot more use cases, like from a hyper personalization, right? In terms of upselling and cross-selling is one.
True.
From an analytical perspective, you look at forecasting, stress testing is going to be very big, because as the portfolio of banks and financial institutions increase, the stress testing is going to be a lot more significance, and RBI being the regulator they are. And we have to ensure the financial status of the strength of the countries remains high. There's going to be a lot more focus on that. The third is alternate data, right? When you're looking at alternate data, we are looking like something like a sentimental analysis. How can we kind of replace that using sentimental analysis to come out with analytics? Specifically coming to marketing or investment decisions. In fact, CRISIL over the years has launched what it calls as a financial condition index, FCI, which publishes the data about the market condition in the country. And it takes in account about 15 parameters across equity, debt, money, and forex market, computes and throws out. And fortunately, we are kind of there in terms of directionally, at least, in terms of where it is from that perspective as well. A team of ours, which is called the funds and fixed income team, works extensively with our clients on looking at the asset portfolio, and then comes out with the returns versus the risk and what should be the asset allocation model as well. The third, which is the most emerging one, which is the ESG, as we call it, which is having a lot of significance. And many people today are making their investments basis the ESG, because that's the call out. We have our ESG scoring that we keep publishing as well. So at least these are three use cases that CRISIL themselves can present to say that it is possible that you're looking at an investment and predicting the market conditions as well. But I'm sure a lot more use cases will emerge as we move forward from here.
It's also interesting how at the moment these reports that perhaps you're coming out with are read by organizations and not the public per se, but there is this is the time when I think it will start influencing every single individual who would want to sort of look at those reports and look at that data that is being mined to make their own personal decisions and to make their own investment decisions. And I think finance is one industry which will sort of benefit a lot with of course, and CRISIL has a lot of work to do, I would say.
I would agree.
All right, Vijayant, of course, your data cloud vision in influencing collaboration and data sharing among cross organizations, like what data is good for me or not good for me, but can be good for you, with those collaborations. How are you enabling them, and what potential does this hold for driving further innovation now?
Sure. I mean, if you look at the data cloud vision which we have, one is what I talked about earlier, is in terms of making sure that there's no silos in data. Data sharing can happen seamlessly and meaningfully, and then it can be done securely as well. I think the other aspect to this whole thing is about the AI side of things, as to how do you actually utilize generative AI on top of your data. And one of the principles we follow is that your data stays where it is in a certain platform. We bring the AI to your data and not the other way around. Because the moment you take your data out, then you have a whole lot of issues on security, privacy, and all of that. So how do you bring these LLMs, as they're called, the large language models, into the platform so that you can actually get further meaningful stuff out of your data by getting the AI closer to the data itself? And that's interesting because we have 3 different LLMs we have come out with. One is called Document AI. It's in preview at this point of time, which can help increase productivity and those sort of things. Basically, looking at documents and then getting intelligence out of it. See, the difference is AI has been there for a long time. We've been talking of artificial intelligence for the past 10 years now, 10 even more. The difference now is that with generative AI, it's become more accessible. It's just become very easy to look at your documents and get sense out of it. We talked about decisioning on underwriting and claims and all of that. Everything is possible now. We also have come out with something called as a co-pilot for developers. It's called an SQL co-pilot, and that's essentially to look at folks who are working on data scientists and other folks, to actually have AI guiding them as they create solutions for data. In a sense, a co-pilot to work with them, and then you have universal search. The mountains of data we talked about, not going to go away. How do you actually do meaningful search and query on that? So three very distinct AI-based interventions form Snowflake, which we part of what Snowflake calls Snowflake Cortex, which have been announced sometime in October, November, and they are in preview right now. But essentially to work with on top of your data cloud and get insights and help monetize and data sharing in a much more meaningful way.
When we talk about India and businesses in India, India is a different beast altogether. What are the kind of businesses that you are dealing with at the moment, and what are typically some of the challenges that are coming up with them, even with all the expertise, and they're doing well as well, but when it comes to scale, when it comes to other important aspects, whether it is interpreting the data regulations or the privacy policies, what are the challenges that Indian companies are throwing at your business, and are you also then individually looking at customizing plans for them?
So India is absolutely exciting as a prospect for Snowflake, and actually for all tech companies. What you would call as the India scale, both the problem and the opportunity. I mean, some of our customers, have more than 100 million customers of their own. Some of them have more than that. The India scale is unique. It's probably only after China that we have this sort of scale of data and consumers, which we deal with. Extremely exciting from an engineering standpoint for Snowflake to look at and say, how do we partner with these organizations? And we are already doing that with some very, very large organizations who are catering to hundreds of millions of customers. Right. And how do you actually help them, run those data platforms in a fashion that, it's meaningful for them, is adding value to the customer experience and to their employees as well. So the India scale problem is very, very, very tantalizing. I think nobody can ignore just the scale we need to work with. So scale is one piece. I mean,
Right.
which is exciting, and we believe that's a huge opportunity. The second is the challenge around getting people to start moving to the cloud and start utilizing that particular grid instead of trying to do it themselves. So the biggest challenge we currently have is on-prem, where people getting them to move both culturally and technically from there to the cloud, so that they can get the benefit of the cloud, the scale, elasticity, the tech prowess being done by somebody else, all of that. That's the biggest challenge.
And building trust as well.
Building trust as well, that your data is probably much safer over here with all the privacy laws and everything else and governance factored by the platform itself. That is a huge factor. So I think that's the piece we are grappling with, and it takes time. Like Avinash talked about, trust takes time. It's one customer at a time. We are building a very, very strong case of reference, case studies across different verticals, maybe financial services, maybe manufacturing, maybe in the consumer sector, CPG, retail, and we already have those. And these are sort of lighthouses which are helping create that trust factor of trust and believability, saying that all is good. This is the benefit and value which these organizations are sort of deriving of having the data on the cloud, and the insights and the monetization they're able to do thereafter.
Well, I think that's a great note to end our conversation on. Very insightful comments and the stories that you have shared about your own companies and your own experiences. Thank you so much for your valuable time and insights. And the India scale story, of course, is great, and magic lies outside of the comfort zone, as they say. So I think it's just important that all companies sort of harness actually the collaborative power of platforms that are already available and doing a fantastic job in understanding perhaps their problems better than them. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you all for being such a wonderful audience.
Forbes India presents the Data Circle, India's Changemakers, in association with Snowflake. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.